Hello everybody, this is Antonio Wolf. We haven't done one of these in a while. Well, it's actually not been too long. I think, like, what is it? It's one of the last videos that I posted on my channel was a critique of other stuff. But no, it has been a while, because I recorded those, like, many months before I posted them. So, I don't know, it's been a while. A random person on the Discord server brought this to my attention because they joined, and I looked at their profile and it said we had a mutual friend, President Sunday, and I'm like, holy shit, why am I still friends on Discord with President Sunday? And he's like, well, he did a video on, like, Winfield and he mentioned you. And I'm like, oh man, he did a video on Winfield? I had to see. Oh, shit. Anyways, should I say something about what I think about this guy? I guess I should. He's a pseud. There's no other way to put it. I mean, go look at his channel. The guy just spends his time shit-talking all day, every day. It's his job. It's kind of rotted his brain. You know, I knew about him many years ago through another friend here on Discord. He tried to introduce us, but Sunday is not the kind of person who actually likes to learn anything. So even when he had time, and I offered to teach him how to read Hegel, he didn't want to take it up because, you know, he had better things to do, like half-assedly read Deleuze. The few times that he's mentioned anything that I know of, well, he's been pretty bad on it. He's not very good with Marx. I took part in one of his streams many years ago, probably like maybe 3-4, where they were critiquing this Vietnamese Marxist named Luna Oi, I think. And like their whole critique was like, well, you know, like she's making this stuff up, you know, it's so stupid, you know, Marx never said things like this. And, you know, I felt really bad actually afterwards in that I didn't really do a good job in properly defending that what she was saying was not against what Marx himself ever said. Mainly because what she was saying was basically the typical Marxist-Leninist standpoint, which is the typical Hegelian view of Marx, which comes through the two major works, well, it's three, the German Ideology, the Holy Family, and Dialectics of Nature. Dialectics of Nature is Engels, you know, got some comments from Marx, but that was his own thing. But German Ideology and the Holy Family was supposedly a mutually worked on thing. And Marx has a lot of stupid shit in those. And so a lot of the positivistic elements that come out of that, well, the Leninists took. Because it's much easier to understand than weird shit like dialectics. But anyways, after that just left a bad taste in my mouth, and I never really wanted to take part in any of his chats ever again. I think he invited me once for, like, they were talking about freedom, but one, I had no time that day, and two, I looked at the panel of the other people, and they were idiots. I've seen his videos critiquing the philosophy of right. He has no idea what he's talking about. So, the fact that he didn't know about the German ideology at the time, the fact that he's this weird kind of anarchist, or at least he has anarchist leanings, as far as I know. Now, I'm not an expert on his views, because I don't really care about him. I don't watch his stuff. But anyways, he's a pseud, and I know he's a pseud because the stuff he talks about that I do know, Hegel, Marx, he has no clue about. So, he's going to shit-talk Winfield a little bit. Richard Dean Winfield, a well-known Hegelian scholar.
Scholar
He's good.
and a gentleman.
and a sorcerer. But yeah,
Not a
he's
Jedi, though. I forget
definitely
that
not a
guy's name.
Jedi. Oh, I know who you're talking about. I don't even know. You know, all his websites are gone. It's sad. The only thing left
Damn.
now is his academia page, the academia.edu page.
I guess he's become a Force ghost.
Yeah, I never picked up. Unfortunately, he chose the wrong horse. Why can't I remember his name right now?
It's like Ken something.
Ken Folders. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. Winfield. Just look at all the amount of books that he's written. The guy is a writing and thinking machine. Incredible output, quite frankly. Much respect in that, like, he actually has done work to re-systematize Hegel towards modern day categories, which is exactly what you ought to be doing, quite frankly. So he knows what he's doing. I don't agree with him completely. Like, on his political views, I've come to diverge very much. He's too liberal. He's also atheistic.
That being said, if his congressional run had succeeded, he'd probably be the greatest congressman ever.
Yeah, I mean, he had the fire in him like Bernie did. Back when Bernie was good.
And his policies, his platform still stands up. Winfields, I mean.
Yeah, because Winfield actually has a theory of the state, unlike President Sunday and Marx. Well, I shouldn't put those two together. Marx is like way, way, way above President Sunday. So anyways, he's shit-talking Winfield. Winfield is my guy. I'm going to rep for him. Now, I have only read like the very early parts of this book, Rethinking Capital, which is going to shit-talk. Now, I can tell you Sunday has no idea what capital is for Marx. He wouldn't know how Chapter 1 of Capital works. So he's not going to have an idea of how Winfield is reconstructing this through a different philosophical exercise. So let's see what he says. Let's just see what he says. And he knows that I'm making this video. He had a shit-talking spat with me just a few hours ago. Somebody alerted him on my server that I was shit-talking that, and he came in. He's like, "Well, what's your issue?" I'm like, "Well, your issues you don't know anything." He's like, "Well, prove me wrong." I'm like, "Well, yeah, give me a proof. You got to show derivational structures, and you're not going to do that." So we got a few people here who want to suffer along with me. Let's go.
One of this, if it gets boring, we'll jump ahead. Apparently it's very bad. However, Brooks got the wrong book, so maybe it's not. Maybe.
Brooks is a dirty delusion, apparently. He's the main theoretical influence on President Sunday. And he's not very good at influencing either. Because Sunday doesn't understand Deleuze.
It's not. Hey, thank you for the incredibly generous 5 gifted Wallows. All right. Introduction. Here we go. Okay. We are Rethinking Capital with Richard Van Dien, or Windian, or Dean Winfield. That was completely wrong. 4 decades ago, I set out to conceive the social reality of the economy so as to shed light on the fate of freedom in society and state. My task was to critique and build upon the pioneering but inadequate efforts of Hegel and Marx to uncover the social dynamic of market relations. The inadequate efforts of Hegel and Marx. Interesting. That's a ballsy sentence right there. Both had recognized that the economy did not consist in a natural metabolism between human beings and their biosphere, in a playing field of psychologically determined wants, or in a sphere of technique where an agent acts unilaterally upon things. Instead, each saw that the economy was a historically emergent, independent social institution. It formed the basic association of a civil society, intermediate between household and state, in which individuals interacted in terms of conventional needs that could only be satisfied by providing others with what they had independently chosen to obtain from others in turn. Hegel and Marx saw that the economy was a historically emergent independent social institution that formed the basic association of a civil society, intermediating between households and state, in which individuals interacted in terms of conventional needs that could only be satisfied by providing others with what they had independently chosen to obtain from others in turn. Now, the funny thing is, they don't say that.
The funny thing is that they literally do.
Yeah, they definitely.
They literally do. Remember what Marx? Yeah. Remember what Marx says capitalism actually is? He says it is ultimately a social dynamic relationship. What do you think a social institution is? That's the whole critique of the fetishism of commodities. That there's nothing natural about economics. There's nothing natural about commodities. They are all social institutions. That's what social relationships are. And Hegel openly says that. I mean, Hegel's the guy who's everything comes from the spiritual dynamic, which is a social recognitive dynamic, which is what? In society, what is the state? And all state structures, one of them being the economy, institutions. I mean, how much more wrong can you be?
Yeah, I mean, verbatim, Hegel mentions the family, because as you know, there's a system of needs which leads to the family, and verbatim, the market is part of civil society, in which families negotiate needs. Family and the state, in philosophy of right, the market is an institution. That's what an institution is. An institution is.
I just don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't understand what the hell you think the economy is, if you don't think it has anything to do with satisfying needs that you can't provide for yourself. Like, what do you think commodity exchange is about?
Well, you see, I assume that he's saying this because he has never seen the literal words of Hegel saying this is an institution, or Marx saying this is an institution. That's the only reason, one could say such a thing. That's. It's a very Muslim tactic. I've been watching way too many Muslim Christian debates, and Muslims love to do this fucking shuffle of words. They're like, show me where Jesus says he's God. Show me where the Bible or the Quran says exactly this. Well, two can play that game. Show me where they say it isn't.
Ever.
They never said it. Ever.
It's also not an institution, by the way. Economy is prior to society.
What is this, some kind of fucking Adam Smith motherfucker right here? The economy is natural?
Like Marx would say that structurally it cohabitates society, but the economy is
it's not prior. Yeah, no, it's not prior. It's not prior. Well, that's exactly it.
You need a society to have an economy.
Yeah, the economy is the structure of class relationships. Class relationships are already objective social institutions. That's what a class is. The only reason he could say this is it must be that he literally his brain is fried, and he's like, they never said the exact words in this sequence. This is an institution.
Well, maybe he thinks classes are also prior to society. Maybe some kind of it's like a Hindu caste system.
So
Well, that would
classes
be
are like
class, though. That'd be like
metaphysical categories, like I mean, not metaphysical, but like ontologically prior to everything. You don't find class in nature. I don't know what he's talking about here.
well, class is like relationship towards production. So if you're going from like primitive society, like what is production per se, or what is the means of production?
No, but class is already an institution. So, once you're in the class of, say, you're the priest and everybody else is a normie, and everybody recognizes this. The world, like your world now works this way. The priest has a certain role, you have a certain role. There you go, class dynamics. It is an institution. Like there doesn't have to be a piece of paper or somebody say, this is now an institution.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with Marx, though, I'm pretty sure it's really just aligned with like production itself, though. So the priest class, well, it depends on like what exactly they're producing or the relationship towards commodity production in general.
Yeah, but that's not the question. The question is just like his problem is he's saying like this is not there's no such things as these being institutions, which is literally stupid.
Okay.
I think he's equating markets in a liberal state with the economy.
No.
In fact, he has to be.
No.
And I'm going to bet he's actually only working with Hegel here, except that the table of contents does not suggest that.
He's not.
Anyone have an idea where I can post current news topics in Discord for somebody to engage with his convenience? There is a stream suggestions, a stream notes channel in the Discord server. I would put it there. If it's crazy dumb news, you can put it in This Week in Stupid. This is very bad.
You read one paragraph in which you're wrong about what it says, and you're like, this is very bad. Okay.
I think Brooks got the wrong book still, but this one is also very bad. Watch out for books with rethinking in the title, apparently. Hegel had established that normative validity could only consist in self-determination.
What's he thinking about?
Oh, he's not thinking.
Any attempt to conceive what was justified as determined by something other than itself could not be sustained. Any attempt to conceive what was justified as determined by something other than itself could not be sustained. That sentence makes no sense. That sentence just actually makes no sense. This sentence here, that is nonsense. That doesn't mean anything.
It is very clear. Anybody who studies Hegel knows what that means. I mean, if you watch my channel, you know about it. Oh my god. Fucking microphone.
You spell it out for
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it for you, Josh. You're the saving grace of this guy. And the people viewing once I post this. Okay. The basis of all claims to knowledge is that you actually have a let's just put it this way. An independent standpoint that stands on its own, not because of anything you say or do or any other relationship that it has to some other thing. Call that the truth, call that God, call that reality, call it whatever. Anything, and I think about it this way, to put it in colloquial terms. What makes something objective is that it quite literally can object, just like, you may object to something in court. You may object to, me insulting you. You may object to somebody stealing from you, taking your stuff. In the same way,
video.
yeah, or like how I object to him in this video and, his stupidity. Objects quite literally do this. Objects object. Oh my god, sorry, like I'm noticing that like my microphone is peaking and don't want to blow out your ears. It's going to sound horrible. So in the same way that objects object, it means that they have something about them that resists the determination from outside. For something to be fully objective, 100% objective, it must be completely self-contained, cannot be affected in any way by anything else. It must be absolute. So normative validity consists only in self-determination. That is, something only has objectivity and only has the power to enforce what it is, both on itself and on other things, if it actually is a self-determining, self-making, self-generating, self-sustaining entity. If it isn't, then it is actually an object only partially. It is something that is mechanically being determined from the outside by something else. And in a way, because it is under an external power, it is a pseudo-object to a certain extent. So in order for the economy to be treated as a real object, something that is really to be studied and not a mere appearance, it must manifest some level of actual independence, objectivity, self-determination. If it wasn't self-determining, then what we'd be talking about is we'd be playing this game of like, it's just like how materialists go and say, look, those thoughts in your mind, concepts and whatnot, they're just words, and words are just like actually neurons firing. The real thing is the neurons, and everything else is just an appearance. It's not real. It's just an illusion. So the meaning of that, any attempt to conceive what was justified as determined by something other than itself could not be sustained, means that insofar as what we're trying to deal with objects and we want to claim that they're real, so long as somebody can point out, look, there's something else determining this, and the essential relationship between things is that something else is always the determining cause and condition, that has logical problems. That logical problem is what skepticism originally attacks, classical skepticism. And it's why during the Enlightenment era, the problem of skepticism from Descartes onward becomes a huge problem that they're trying to constantly answer, and they never do. Until German idealism and until specifically Hegel. So, pretty intelligible. I mean, to be honest, this book is the equivalent of President Sunday opening a calculus textbook, and he hasn't even learned arithmetic. So if you open up a calculus textbook and you see a bunch of symbols, algebra, and these equations that you don't fucking understand, you're like, well, this is nonsense. Well, you don't even understand arithmetic. You can't do 1 + 1 = 2. Of course you can't do a derivative. Of course you can't do an integral. Of course it doesn't make any sense to you. Duh.
This doesn't mean anything. So long as what was justified was held to owe its justification to some other privileged factor, that foundation of justification could claim validity on its own terms only by being the source of its own justification. The foundation of validity is then compelled to ground itself, eliminating its own defining difference from what it justifies. This also does not make any sense. The
No, it makes sense. The skeptical problem, it's if everything has a cause and has a reason, it's called the law of sufficient reason. You can always ask why, and the assumption is, well, like, in order for it to be the case of anything, there is some other reason for it, and so on and so on and so on. Eventually, either you admit that there's an infinite chain in which no reason actually fully explains anything, and there is no full explanation of anything. As a matter of fact, as the chain gets infinitely long, every reason is infinitely worthless too. So like no reason is eventually a good reason at all. You end up basically the equivalent of brute facts or brute statements in which, well, it is what it is. Or you reach a bottom foundation in which you're just told, look, you can't ask why anymore, reasons, because. Everything grounds out in being, everything's because of being, and then you ask, well, why is being the way that it is? Well, there is no reason, it just is, okay, stop asking. It's the same thing like God, like religious people do. You ask them, well, how come, God is the cause of everything? Well, what's the cause of God? And like, look, you can't ask that, doesn't make it, you just can't apply it to God, okay? It just is.
I don't know how you could be any more clearer. I mean, firstly, he says things must be self-determined. And then right after, he gives the result or what happens if things aren't self-determined. If a thing isn't self-determined, it lacks self-identity. The identity of a thing is what it structurally is, as determined by itself. So, for example, a tree is a tree because it's a kind of organic being that grows, reproduces, and sustains itself according to its own internal principles and processes. Not because it's a label externally imposed from it on it. Sorry. So I don't know why he's just immediately saying this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. He's giving Winfield here. He's writing very clearly, very logically, and we're only like the first page in, so I don't know how the rest of this is gonna go.
I mean, can you imagine? People had to donate $100 for him to read something and be worse than a midwit, quite frankly. A midwit to me is you're middling at whatever it is that you're doing. You're average. This is like subpar. Even the average, like, midwit philosophy student, philosophy 101 moron, could at least understand, look, this is a philosophy book. I haven't had any prior study in this material. Of course I would understand it. So,
If someone paid $100 for him to read this,
yeah, you see the on the screen, it's like 100 skip the theory, 100 give me drama. So he does whatever people pay him to do. People rarely pay enough for him to, like, quote unquote read theory, because why would you? I mean, this is the level of commentary that you're getting. Like, why would you?
yeah, I mean, maybe he is right that the economy is not about satisfying needs.
I would actually respect him a lot more if he at least attempted to parse the meaning, instead of just immediately saying, this doesn't make sense. Okay, can you at least, give $100 worth of commentary? Like, read out the words and then say, oh, this relates to this, et cetera, et cetera. At least try to give an interpretation.
Yeah.
Like the syntax is obviously fine. So, I mean, break down how each of the things relate to each other and say why it doesn't make sense. Don't just say, this doesn't make sense.
It's actually confession. When he says, this doesn't make sense, the implied thing there is, it doesn't make sense to me. Therefore, it shouldn't make sense to you.
Yeah, he's the measure of reality. He's the Kantian transcendental ego, the transcendental unity of perception is his and his alone. I bet he doesn't know what those mean. Yeah, I bet you don't know what it means, Sunday. Come at me.
This actually makes no sense. These sentences make no sense. They are not saying anything. The distinction between what has and what confers validity. I notice he has not actually characterized what validity means, or what normative validity means, or why it is needful. But I digress.
They're basic philosophy jargon. I knew about them back when I first got into philosophy. It's a very quick topic that comes up early on. I think, like, what is it? You take, like, your very first basic epistemology 101 stuff, normative validity will come up. One, validity is a basic logical term. I don't know why one would pretend that it isn't. There's validity, valid arguments, soundness, true arguments. And the normativity is an epistemic thing. Normative means that you ought to follow this. It is a rule. It's funny because Sunday is kind of has a hard-on for like very weird etymologies. Like his definition of democracy follows a very hard line etymological form of it, rather than like the way that's normally used. So you'd think that he'd wisen up and just look it up, find out what that actually means. He'd find out the word norm is just rule. Rule of what? Rule for what? The rules you follow,
The distinction between what has and what confers validity ends up being determined by the very foundation of justification once that privileged factor is made to be consistent with itself. Validity turns out to reside in what is self-determined, which means that truth and right consist in the autonomy of reason and conduct. We got a citation here. Finally. Where does this go? Similar considerations apply to aesthetic worth. Okay, this might actually clarify something. Generally, foundations of justification can be privileged, given, or privileged determiners. Privileged givens or privileged determiners. Foundational philosophy, accordingly, has two fundamental varieties. One represented by pre-critical metaphysics, which grounds truth in the privileged given of some first principle of being, and another represented by transcendental philosophy, which grounds truth in some privileged determiner comprising some structure of cognition determining what counts as objectively knowable. Foundational ethics, similarly, has two fundamental forms. Teleological ethics, which grounds valid conduct. I keep saying valid conduct. What do you mean valid conduct? Valid conduct. Excuse me, your ethical behavior is invalid. It's like, no, you'd say it's virtuous or vicious. That would be an example.
Just like a valid arguments are things that are actually functional according to the rules. Valid conduct is something that is functional according to the rules of conduct. So here's an example. Marx brings it up. Everybody who's ever thought about this comes upon this one pretty quickly. Bribes. Bribes are not a valid commodity. They do not fall under something that is logically, metaphysically capable of being a commodity. You cannot, in fact, sell your will of anything to anybody, because they cannot grab hold of your will. They cannot now take ownership of your will and do whatever they want. It is always subject to your will, whether you will accede or deny, what it is that they want you to do. They can go out and pay you $1,000, and you can say, yeah, sure, I'll vote for so-and-so. And then you can just go ahead and not do it. You know why? Because they don't, in fact. Yeah, you might end up in the river, but they cannot actually control your will as a commodity. It's not possible. That's why bribery is not actually a valid transaction. You can do something called bribery. They can claim that they own your will. They cannot, however, in fact own it. They cannot actually bring it under their determining will. It always remains under you. You are the living will. Slavery, therefore, is also invalid in this way, in that no person can actually be owned properly as a person. You can, sure, objectify somebody and terrify and terrorize them and physically abuse them into submission, but their personality cannot actually come under your willpower. They can always resist. I don't know. I think that's pretty clear. You guys agree?
Yeah, but maybe President Sunday doesn't think slavery's invalid.
Well, it doesn't matter what he thinks.
If there's no such thing as invalid conduct.
I don't know why he's being so picky. It's perfectly permissible to use valid conduct in the context of a philosophical book.
Citation, please. Where are the citations on this?
Yeah, what are the citations on this? The funniest thing is when most of his citations are actually to his own work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
like Winfield in most of his books just cites himself.
Well, I mean, that's what happened here. He was so excited for a citation. It's just a footnote.
Oh, actually,
So were mine.
yes. Look at the italic systematic aesthetics. Who wrote that? Winfield. Stylistics, we think the art forms are after Hegel. Who wrote that? Winfield. So the citation is to his own work.
Hey, I mean, it proves, his prior point that he's making. The one that President Sunday found nonsensical.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I can do that too, and as a matter of fact, I should start doing that because I have so much material in which I could just cite myself.
Valid? Arguments are valid. Ethics aren't valid. That's not how that works. Valid conduct in the which grounds valid conduct in the privileged area, privilege given of a highest good, and yeah. So when he says valid conduct, he means virtuous conduct. I don't know why he's saying valid. Which grounds valid conduct is a privileged determiner of valid conduct, such as social contract. Oh my god. Oh my god.
He saw a word he recognized, and his monkey brain thinks he now gets it.
Not how social contract works. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's a paddling. Analogously, foundation.
He doesn't know what social contract is. That's not a reference. Like what Winfield referenced there is not social contract theory as a basis of the state. He's talking about the fact of social contract. You know, when you go to buy a car and you sign stuff at a dealership, that's a social contract. When you pay your bills, that's a social contract. When you sign your check, it's a social contract. Yeah, those are all social contracts. There's nothing weird about that.
Beauty, either in imitation of given reality, as in classical mimetic aesthetics, or in being determined by a privileged determiner, as in the aesthetics of reception pioneered by Hume and Kant. Just as reason overcomes foundations by developing autonomously, and ethics overcomes foundations by locating valid conduct and self-determining, this is not actually helping me at all, is it? And ethics overcomes foundations by locating valid conduct and self-determination, so aesthetics overcomes foundations by locating beauty in the autonomous unification of universal meaning with individual configuration. I have attempted to reconstruct the non-foundational aesthetics pioneered by Hegel in two books, Systematic Aesthetics and Stylistics, Rethinking the Art Forms After Hegel. That's the one that kept popping up. The first of which considers aesthetics worth in general, and the second of which considers the particular style of artistic configuration. My account of the individual arts remains to be completed. Oh, and our second footnote is Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. Oh boy. Oh jeez.
Why would citing Adam Smith when you're referring to Adam Smith be a problem?
Or when talking about economic theory in general.
Yeah, imagine you were writing a book about Hitler and you cited Mein Kampf. Wow, problematic, guys. Oh my, he cited Mein Kampf. Oof, I don't know. Oh boy, might be a Hitlerite.
Hegel further understood that self-determined conduct could not be wielded by an agent in isolation from others. Alone, one can only exercise the given faculty of choice, whose form of willing is not the product, but the enabling condition of all one's voluntary actions. Since that faculty is operative in each and every choice, it is formal in character, leaving the content of the options among which it decides something externally given. In these respects, the single choosing will exercises a volition that does not determine the form of its own willing, nor what choices it can make. To be self-determined, Hegel recognized individuals must will in relation to one another, since only in conventions of interaction can individuals have an agency that is determined in and through their own conduct. Right. This is essentially Hegel's elaboration on Rousseau, actually.
No, it isn't. This is literally the first section. Actually, it's not even the first section. It's the last section of subjective spirit. It's the transition from subjective spirit to objective spirit in what Hegel calls the deduction of the will, which has no reference whatsoever to political philosophy. It is a purely metaphysical account of what willing as such is. I have a video on it. Just look it up, Introduction to Philosophy of Right, Antonio Wolff. Which, by the way, I linked to him when he was shit-talking. He's like, look, I won't yap, if you come on my stream, talk to me about this. I'm like, look, if you don't yap, all I'm going to do is give you that lesson, and I've already done it. It's recorded. Go listen to it. Why would I give you a show on your live stream?
This is the case in every exercise of rights, insofar as individuals therein willed and agency as universal prerogative can be engaged in only by participating.
All right, should I explain what that paragraph says? I guess I should. Might as well make it worth something. So, Hegel further understood that self-determined conduct cannot be wielded by an agent in isolation from others. This is referring to the theory of recognition. If you don't know anything about that, I have a video on it. Why self-conscious cannot be singular, why it must be two. It's on my channel, look it up. That will explain to you that in order for you to be self-conscious, you must in fact have two people, two self-conscious individuals mutually interacting. Here's the basics butchering of it in short form. Think about, in order for you to know what self-conscious is, you must have somebody else who is self-conscious, because they're the only ones that fully make self-consciousness itself the object of your cognition, in which you can see what a self-consciousness of its own actually does, free from your preconceptions of who you are and what interests you. Because who you are and what interests you is not necessarily the broad, abstract category of self-consciousness. You can only get this understanding from seeing other people, seeing how they have their own particular interests in the way that they are and how they perceive you. For where you see, well, there's a difference between us, but there's also a similarity. Your conception of what it is to be free can only really appear when you perceive someone else who is also free, and they can do the worst thing in the world that everybody hates, which is to tell you no. It also makes it so that you become meta-reflexive, in which you begin to think about how another self-consciousness views you and how they represent you within themselves. And then in representing their representation of you, you act and respond in accordance to that, both, when they are actually present as well as when they're not there. This then extends to the will. So he says, alone one can only exercise the given faculty of choice. So without other people, you don't have, any externalization of the will in a proper sense, because there is no object in which there's any need to recognize willing. So animals don't recognize willing. They recognize force, they recognize violence, and that's where they draw lines. But they don't recognize, oh, that's President Sunday's, coffee mug. That's, his bookshelf. Can't do that because it's his. Animals won't do that. And there's no point in you going around, that's mine, this is mine, that is mine. When an animal goes, like a dog goes and pees on a bush or anything else to mark their territory, they're not engaging in this thing called I am marking my property. They're just marking their scent as, I have been here. Beware. I will be back. So since that faculty is operative in each and every choice, it is formal in character, leaving the content of the option among what it decides which it decides, something externally given. Willing as mere choice is, well, just a capacity. So choice for what? That's why it's formal. In these respects, a single choosing will exercises volition that does not determine the form of its own willing, nor what choices it can make. To be self-determined, Hegel recognized individuals must will in relation to one another, since only in conventions of interaction can individuals have an agency that is determined in and through their own conduct. So in order for you to recognize what a will is and what your will is individually, there must be other people against who you will, and in which the act of willing involves an act of recognition in which you're not going to pummel each other to death, you're not going to beat the shit out of each other, but you're going to have some discourse, some kind of, social dialogue, which is rational, in which there will be a recognition. This is mine, that is yours. This is why, that is why. You could come up with a rule: whatever I touch is mine. Whoever touches first, that's theirs. And then you accept that rule. There you go. Now you've objectified willing. Now people recognize, oh, you touched that rock is yours, you touched it first. Therefore, I don't mess with that rock because it's yours. That's objectified willing. Before that interaction, there is no way to objectify your will in the world. There's no one to recognize it. And there's no way to know what is my will in that way beyond, well, I choose here, I choose there. And there is no meaning to the will beyond that. This is the case in every exercise of rights, insofar as individuals therein will an agency whose universal prerogative can be engaged in only by participating in the reciprocal interaction, where individuals will so as to facilitate the same sort of willing by their counterparts. So insofar as there's property, there cannot be just property for me and no property for you. Then the whole idea of property doesn't work, because they can't recognize my property without me recognizing that there is such a thing as property and that they could at least potentially have it. And if we weren't equal in that kind of recognition, that we were recognized as the same kind of being, me declaring my property to my cats at home, that's meaningless. They can't cognize that they're not beings of the same kind, and they can't even potentially rise to any understanding of that. Whereas, a slave, even in the most dire of times, people have always recognized slaves are, in fact, in some way equal to the masters as far as some reasoning capacity goes, which is exactly why they feared very greatly that slaves would be educated in anything. So Hegel saw individuals determine themselves as owners by embodying the wills and different external factors that they mutually recognize to be the respective exclusive domains of their rights as owners. That's the birth of property. The first right that Hegel comes up with is the right of property, which there's a quick transition. I think something called possession, but possession is I have something in my possession, and so long as I hold it, it's mine, but I don't objectify my willing in such that if I leave it, nobody recognizes it as mine anymore. So insofar as I have property, now I have to recognize that property in general can exist. Other people can have property too. I can't actually own the entire world. I can't possess everything within my grasp. I can say that it is, but if people don't recognize it, I can't enforce it. And at some point, you just have to recognize that is theirs, this is mine. And so long as then it's established and people will go ahead and mutually agree, there you go. Now property is for the first time truly established. Now it is meaningful to say I have a right to my property. So similarly, individuals determine themselves as self-ruling citizens by jointly participating in institutions of self-government that consist in nothing but the political self-determination of the members. You join a community, there is a process by which that community determines itself. The members of that community all agree on this process. They abide by it. Call it monarchy, call it democracy, call it whatever. The economy, Hegel realized, was another institution of right in which market agents exercise the universal entitlement to satisfy self-selected particular interests in reciprocity. Well, it's cut off, so we'll just continue with the video.
And reciprocally, where individuals will so as to facilitate the same sort of willing by their counterparts. So Hegel saw Individuals determine themselves as owners by embodying their wills in different external factors that they mutually recognize to be the respective exclusive domains of their right as owners. Similarly, individuals determine themselves as self-ruling citizens by jointly participating in institutions of self-government that consist in nothing but the political self-determinations of their members. The economy, Hegel realized, was another institution of right in which market agents exercise the universal entitlement to satisfy self-selected particular interests in reciprocity with others. Participants in the economy thereby engage in the basic freedom of civil society, whose distinctive social self-determination revolves around its members, pursuing self-determined particular ends that can only be achieved by enabling others to do the same. How long is this introduction? This is terrible. This is terrible. I'm sorry. I am sorry. This is... We might jump...
Should I show people like what he said in my chat? Yeah, let's show the hypocrisy of this man. Actually, okay, I think he's I'm sorry, I don't know how he identifies nowadays. I know that he is actually trans, but I don't know if he's like publicly said anything about like preferred pronouns or anything. Here it is. Because he was bitching about, you have provided no substantive arguments against me. So is that on screen? Yes, it is. So somebody asked me if I would if I would go on his stream and debate him. And I said that just like with PP, perspective philosophy, I have very specific questions I know he can't answer and which he will want to yap around. So somebody alerted him, because he doesn't come on my server otherwise. He's only ever posted once, and he posted on accident, actually. So his whole channel revolves around drama on LeftTube, BreadTube, and all that other shit. And so he's like, what if I promise not to yap? Well, I'm adding to it, but like, here it's very obvious who's right and who's wrong. So I'm defending Winfield, but he can go ahead and farm. I don't care. Actually, it's better for me. He has more followers than I do, so if he talks about me, I get more views. So he said, what if I promise not to yap? And that's when I told him, well, I have the introduction to the philosophy of right commentary, which is exactly what I would give you as proof that you don't know how to read this stuff. And since I already recorded it, so why would I go and talk to you about it on stream? And then he's like, it's a bit strange to say someone is out to lunch on a reading on someone's take on capitalism and then fail to give any specific objections, referring instead to a video made on the introduction to a book written before the words capitalism was known to have been put to print. So here's his complaining, no specific objections. Has he given any specific objections? He just said, well, this is bad. This is bad. This is unintelligible. This is meaningless. I mean, I think it's obvious. It's yapping. And then he's like, that's not yapping. I'm emphasizing the total lack of substance on your part. I'm thirsty for it. And basically, he keeps on yapping. So you can see, it didn't really last so long. The only thing I'll point out is this guy's a hypocrite, because there's an asymmetry that I've got. I don't have credentials from a university, but I've done the work and it's out there. what is it, that phrase? The proof of the pudding is in the eating. I have eaten that pudding, and I have baked it for other people. They can eat it too. It's right there. It's free.
You
There
baked
you go.
the pudding.
Yes, I baked the pudding. Josh, I have my own independent like derivations. You know that.
What kind of pudding do you bake?
Where there's the one on the perspective philosophy, like the morality in
No, I'm
relation to
talking
animals
about
one.
pudding.
Well, I'm talking about my pudding. I know what you're talking about. I don't play your game. I twist your words. I'm like a rabbi that way. I know how that works. So if people go like, well, you've never done anything independent. Yes, I have. There is the rederivation of capital, chapter 1. It's on my blog, Imperial Trail. There is the derivation of morality as regards animals, as PP, or perspective philosophy, was trying to do, in which he failed. And I have that whole video, debate. Well, it's not a video. It's the recorded quote-unquote debate. It wasn't a debate, really. Of me grilling him to show a derivation of his claim that, you can get a duty to be ethical towards animals in some way, like for veganism from Hegel, and he couldn't do it, so I did it for him. There is my derivation on the concept of cuteness. What else do I have? Well, there's the negative analysis, negative dialectic of the critique of video games as art. I've done quite a bit. So there's that pudding for you to eat. And then he thought he'd mock me. Oh, it's like, if you mean you read books and commentate on them for a decade, congratulations on your first undergraduate degree. And he called me just a truck driver. Point is, this guy's a hypocrite. Totally obvious. He doesn't make any critiques worth anything. Just says, well, this is bad. I don't know what this means, therefore it can't be meaningful. And he thinks he has any right to shit talk me.
A truck driver is better than a streamer for a career. It's a full-time slot monger.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he is. All he does is just shit talk other people and like live off their filth. And I think that actually led to the degradation of his personality. Like, this is where like Marx is. You would think that somebody who likes Marx and like in particular likes the humanist Marx would be self-conscious about how like being a whore for capitalism quite literally has changed around his entire demeanor. He wasn't this way before. When he made it his full-time job and he realized that he could only make this a full-time job if he went towards that trash-talking, like constant, like slop content, he wouldn't have turned out this way. Had he kept on. He used to be a lumberjack, I guess, from what I heard, or worked somewhere, in the lumberjack industry, which is kind of crazy. I think he worked heavy equipment or something. So he's done respectable work before, and now, yeah, he makes a living. But I mean, you sold your soul, man. You sold your soul, which is precisely why I don't want to do the streaming thing. People have told me that multiple times. They're like, "AW, you got the character and the voice and the style for somebody who could be very good at the debate bro popular live streaming thing." I don't want to do that. I don't want to stoop that low. I know what happens to people. I know that once it becomes your job, it's not easy to say no. Oh well, I can get views by talking about this one thing that's actually meaningless, but hey, it's the slop that everybody wants and I need money. Can't do that.
You don't want to be a slave to the algorithm?
No, I do not. It's also I haven't done any podcast things multiple times. Hyperion and I, people have been asking us for years, do a podcast. They were like, yeah, but we're gonna get bored and run out of topics, and then you become a slave to the thing. Because I've seen it. Everybody I know, that I follow on podcasts, after 1 year, it doesn't matter what topic, you run dry on it, on everything, and you just start repeating yourself. Why would I want to do that to myself?
You could do a limited, only a set number of episodes and keep it on a specific topic.
Yeah, I've thought about that.
It's possible to like shill donations without becoming too captive to. But there are creators out there that make money from their creations that haven't worked themselves out.
No, yeah, but you have to have like something that's you have to be like yourself, like an extremely entertaining person for the very specific things that you do. And I'm not one of those. I'm too autistic.
Do reactions video.
Like this?
Now, if President Sunday, he offered you to go on his stream again, but this time he offered you $100, you know, like he was offered to read this. Does that change anything?
$100. Yeah, that would change it. On the condition that, like, you know, he expects nothing from me. That way I could just like fucking like mute him like on my side while he like talks, and you know, if he like says like, "Hey, I'm talking to you," I'm like, "What? Repeat that." And then I'll respond to like, you know, the much shortened whatever he says. I'll do it for that. Anyways, no substantive critique. Oh my, what the fuck is with my microphone today? I swear. Does it sound loud occasionally for you guys? Sorry, guys, I've noticed like my recording, like it fucking peaks and spikes.
It's fine for me.
All right, hopefully it's not too bad on the recording. It's like what happened like that time that I interviewed Iremy. I didn't realize that it was fucking spiking like half the fucking time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can set up like a limiter. I forget what the term is called, but limits the amount of volume.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm like too stupid to figure that out because I tried that with Audacity like 6 years ago, and like, oh, you just like set up this, and I could not figure out how the fuck that worked. Anyways, let's keep going with this trash.
A little. I want to see if he just butchers Marx right out the gate. Although Hegel had it, I mean, he already did. I just want to see if he does it more.
He mentioned Marx once, and what he said was right. Like, how did he butcher Marx?
It sounds wrong. It's not. Like, so his take on Hegel here is fine. Like, the super, like, reductive version of this is essentially that freedom is conditional on social factors that only are manifest when you have people acting in a system of laws with each other as rights-giving subjects that essentially give each other a certain identity and level of social and therefore personal existence that can only happen in the context of a community of equals under a higher system that allows them to actualize their wills at a grander scale, and a whole bunch of bullshit that's going to be phrased very poorly, but you get the general gist of it.
What he said right there is not wrong. And it's not because he understands it. It's because he's literally regurgitating something he's read somewhere else. Because it isn't what Winfields said. It's tangentially related, but it's not directly what Winfield was talking about. Winfield was talking about more of the progressive synthesis kind of thing. It's a nice $5 word for you, President Sunday. It's a Kantian term, progressive synthesis. You might learn it if you read a little bit about Kant.
Of universe with individual configuration. I have attempted to reconstruct the non-foundational aesthetics pioneered by Hegel in 2 books, Systematic Aesthetics and Stylistics, Rethinking the Art Forms After Hegel. That's the one that kept popping up. Alone, one can only exercise the given faculty of choice, whose form of willing is not the product, but the enabling condition of individuals determine themselves as owners by embodying their wills. Of eudaimonia in Aristotle, it's a much more advanced form that can only happen in the community of equals under a higher system that allows them to actualize their wills at a grander scale, and a whole bunch of bullshit that's going to be phrased very poorly, but you get the general gist of it. It's essentially a much more advanced version of eudaimonia in Aristotle. It's a much more advanced form of the general will in Rousseau. It's that kind of general thing. None of which, by the way, is signed on to by Marx, who is critical of this for the exact reason that it is literally just making sublime state ideology. That's it.
What the fuck's he talking about? None of that has to do with this book. I have this book. It's not about that. One, look, Winfield does not claim that he's being faithful to Marx. He doesn't care what Marx is doing. He says Marx just happened to be right because he made the right movements in logical determinations as to like how to make a science of the categories of capitalism. Beyond that, Winfield is not signing up to communism. He's not signing up to Marx's theory of human being. He's not signing up for any of that. He's saying, look, what Marx did is very Hegelian. We can just get rid of the external things, which he did, because Marx claimed to be utilizing Hegel for something non-Hegelian. And of course, if you understand what Hegel is actually doing, that's not possible. So Winfield's project here is like, well, let's take what Marx did and make it fully Hegelian. That's it. It has nothing to do with ideology. It has nothing to do with state, anything. State doesn't really come into this until much later. Yeah, I mean, it's a philosophical science. What do you want?
Actually, which centers the state as the locus and fount of human freedom. Marx does not think this, obviously.
Yeah, nobody cares. You know, like, is Marx like the fucking prophet or something? Is he just right because he says so? No. Is Hegel the fucking prophet? Is everything he says right because he says so? No. But Hegel actually has a, well, gigantic system proving everything as strongly as it can be proven. Not perfectly, you know, there's many gaps in the system, including the philosophy of right. Lots of things to be worked out. But the project is not Marx's. And if you put them on which one is ultimately more justified, as far as like what we can actually know, as opposed to what we want to emotionally believe, like being an anarchist, such as President Sunday. Now he might say, like, I'm not an anarchist. Well, he clearly has anarchist tendencies. He doesn't like the state. I don't know why. I've never asked. Don't care. Since he assumes state equals bad, he sees Winfield says state equals good. And he's like, oh, Winfield bad. And since he assumes state equals bad, and he sees that Marx says state equals bad, he's like, oh, Marx is good. Even though, like, if this guy talked to an actual communist, Marxist, they would tear him apart. As a matter of fact, they actually have. He's talked to, what's his name, Has from Infrared. I don't respect Has as a thinker. He's not philosophically like gifted or bright, or he's also not very good at the actual politics of the stuff. But from what I remember listening to that quote-unquote debate, Has wiped the floor with him twice, which is sad. I mean, has also wiped the floor with prospective philosophy, which is sad.
Although Hegel had attempted to conceive how the economy could consist in an institution of social freedom, his account was undeveloped at best. Really? I thought it was actually extraordinarily well developed. It just didn't critique capital. In particular, Hegel failed to...
He just didn't critique capital. What the hell does that have to do with anything?
determine the market, there you go, and the implications of the relation of capital and labor. Moreover, he allowed pre-modern feudal estate relations to intrude into his economic conception. Pre-modern feudal estate relations.
Yeah, you know what that is, pal?
He's read the book. I don't know why he's acting surprised.
He's googling feudalism.
It's like this is the only book.
Estate?
Yeah, this is the only book of like Hegel that he's like bothered trying to read. The fact that he doesn't know about this is kind of crazy to me. He doesn't know that like Hegel has an agricultural estate, you know, like the landowners, and like that's their whole thing. They're tied to the land. You know, that's where like the nobles and stuff come from. The people who run the state and who have the state as their own business and aim specifically. He doesn't know that like Hegel has the monarchy. You know, I don't know. Why would you be surprised?
I'm sorry. Okay. 2 points. First of all, feudalism is not pre-modern. Secondly,
Feudalism is not pre-modern. What? Are you? Yes. Oh my God! Wow.
What do you even say to that?
Are you serious? Okay, man. Like, I could forgive what he said up to now. Is just like, look, you just don't know philosophy, okay? But to believe this, to not know what modernity and feudalism are and what the relationship is, I don't know. Supposedly he has a degree. I don't know if like I don't know if it's like a bachelor's or something in political science. What the fuck did this guy learn? Where did he go?
You know, a lot of people graduate college without learning anything.
But look at the library that he has in his fucking back. That's not like one of those AI generated green screen things. That's a real library of books.
we're going to take a bit of a digression here, okay? Bit of a little digression. We are going to read together The Problem with Feudalism. Later historians say the concept doesn't match reality, apparently. Medieval historians generally aren't bothered by words. The intrepid medievalist, it might help if I actually made this bit.
Word concept fallacy. This is the same shit of like, well, you know, we can't exactly pinpoint, you know, what makes a woman according to the chromosomes because you have, you know, triple X, you have some XYY. You know, so if we define women by XX, well, like, well, what are they about these other women who don't have the exact chromosomes right there? That's why you have to have an ontogenetic account of concepts. We're not listening to him read a fucking stupid paper.
Yeah, like how relevant even is it for him to go into what feudalism is right now because of this one sentence from Winfield? It's like
None.
it's such a uh, an unnecessary tangent.
Yeah, it's not even. The point was that Hegel had the a period of time, conceptions from a period of time that seeped into his system. Not that feudalism was pre-modern, or if it was or was not. Completely
No, no,
pointless tangent.
like look what's on the screen right here. I already knew that that's what this was going. It's a critique of actually the word feudalism was something invented very recently after, a certain historical epoch at a certain year. Therefore, what feudalism as a concept describes, isn't real. It doesn't exist. It's just a made up word. So feudalism is modern because it's a modern invention. Like this idea of feudalism is a modern invention. But that's irrelevant to like what's being defined because Winfield does not get his definitions from dictionaries or from academic agreements.
He definitely has his moments of his people in the chat have been saying neuron activation, but because he isn't understanding anything. He's short circuiting and saying, this is nonsense. This doesn't mean anything. And then he'll see a word he recognizes. And then it's his chance to feel like he's smart. And his way to prove that he's smart is to say, actually, lean down, put down his glasses a little bit. Say, actually.
Yeah, so you can see there, the end of the article is that feudalism hasn't disappeared. Well, no shit, there's still some feudal states around. But that doesn't make them modern. Just like Islam isn't a modern religion like Christianity is. I said it. Christianity is a modern religion. It's the only one. It's where modernity begins.
Right? Present Sunday, you should read We've Never Been Modern. We should at some point. Got a lot on my plate. I've got a Nietzsche video essay to write tonight after this, okay? But, lest we explode Jake's brain too much, we are going to return to the actual thing we're supposed to be covering here. So, moreover, Hegel allowed pre-modern feudal estate relations to intrude into his economic conception, as did Marx. Instead of delineating class divisions based upon freedom.
No, he didn't. One, Marx did not set up a theory of the state in which he explicitly posited, you ought to have these certain relationships. So Marx did not create a theory of the state in which pre-modern feudal relations were allowed and were necessitated in some way. As a matter of fact, Marx's whole thing is like all these prior relationships of class, between lords and peasants and whatnot, they're all going away because capitalism just cannot work with them. Even slavery could not keep up with the capitalist mode of production. Yes, you can have slavery here and there, but you cannot have a general economy of slavery. It will not function, and we already know that historically. Because in the United States, that's exactly what happened. The South could not keep up with Northern production. Even if there had not been a civil war, slavery would have ended in the South because it was not economically viable. You can't have a slave society that also has industrial capacity. It's not possible. Because you need educated people for industrial capacity. You need people who can at least read and write. And what were they fucking like killing people for on the plantations for daring, to try to learn to read and write? Because they knew that if people thought people could read things, and reading gets ideas in people's heads. And slaves get uppity when they get ideas in their heads, and they actually read the Bible and realize they are equal human beings in the eyes of God. You know.
Wow. Instead of delineating class divisions based upon forms of earning specific to market freedom, Hegel inserted the bonds of a peasantry and landed gentry, whose groupings were based on birthright that simultaneously defined its members' kinship, occupation, and relation to power. When Hegel proceeded to consider the social interest groups that arise from market activity, he conceived them as corporations advancing the privileges of feudal guilds rather than economic interests specific to civil society. These oppressive conventions But there were guilds, though. That's not wrong. These oppressive...
Nobody said there weren't guilds. What the fuck is with that?
These oppressive conventions spilled over into Hegel's account of the family and the state. Instead of developing the family as a co-determined joint private domain, Hegel subjected the household to traditional hierarchies based on natural difference, limiting marriage to a heterosexual union where the husband was the master of the home, representing it in society and state. Similarly, instead of consistently determining free political association...
I'm going to give you a hot take right now. You will probably find this not only conservative, but you'll probably call me reactionary on the comments. But go ahead. I have come to the conclusion that Hegel was right about the family. It is something that is ultimately, if you get rid of the biological connection, it's kind of nonsensical. Yes, you can have a non-biologically related family. You know, people just kind of come together. You know, there can be adoptions and whatnot. And that's a tangential, contingent formation which has no essential reality of its own. The family really doesn't make sense if it is not a productive unit in which, guess what? Women and women will not make kids. Men and men will not make kids. And you can't have a society in which everybody's adopted. Doesn't make sense that way. So
that isn't to say, like, you know, those unions shouldn't be recognized or they should be outlawed, but of course they're not going to be the norm. They'll never be the norm.
Well, no, Hegel's position, and I do think there's some reason to agree to a certain level of that, which is they shouldn't be recognized. Outlawed, well, if they're not recognized, there's no reason to outlaw them. Like, yeah, I don't think you should, like, there's any point in, like, making it illegal for two men to live together and have a homosexual relationship or whatever. But to not recognize them as having a marriage is a different thing. And I do think that there is a significance to marriage as particularly tied to the concept of family that is biologically tied, and it doesn't make sense to recognize it.
You also see this play out in real life with blended families or split families. Usually one of the parents always favors their biological kid. Usually maybe that's sometimes guilt, maybe it's loyalty, it's some psychological issue. But it generally works out better if the biological aspect of it aligns with the conceptual.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just like for the norm, quite literally the norm, the rule. That there will be exceptions. Can you have adoptions and whatnot? Yes, absolutely. But that's not the norm. And can there be a primacy to say like the spiritual reality of the family as opposed to the biological one? Yeah. You know, are your adopted parents, you know, who really truly love you and raise you, like, are they less your parents because they're not your biological parents? No. Yeah, there is a certain point at which, like, the connection is strong enough to recognize that not only you recognize, but other people recognize that, like, no, these are your parents. Like, you know, they fulfill the role and the reality of that. They actualize it. But it is not the norm.
So, I mean, this is tangential, but why is a homosexual family, like an adopted family, why do you not just see it as an exception to the norm? The norm being, heterosexual biological family.
There is the mom.
Because
They're
in my
the
mind, I see no reason why it isn't just an exception to the norm. It's not the same as like a polygamous marriage, which is
well.
totally outside.
Well, there are the metaphysical logical reason is that women and men have a different vibe, and that this balances out in the expression of gender within the household and the roles. And it seems that the empirical evidence does side that you need both of those vibes in your life. Otherwise, you're highly unbalanced one way or the other, and it causes neuroses. It's also the case that in the fact that it's not normal, that you suffer as somebody who's the child in that relationship. It's also, I'll say it, degenerate. There's really like, you can appeal to the fact that, I got the sexual urges. Well, yes. So what? Once you have an objective ethics perspective as to like what is actually like allowable, you can't tell me that it's not degenerate to be engaging in anal sex and blowjobs and all those things. You ought not do it. It's not like, oh well, God says it's bad. It's demeaning to yourself, and you know it. Of course, after a certain point, once you engage in certain things, you just kind of like get rid of the shame for yourself, and you're like, well, I like it now. Yeah, you can get used to any shameful thing if you really want to, but you really shouldn't, and it really shouldn't be normalized, and you certainly shouldn't be giving an example to kids. And there's no shortage of men and women pairs who would adopt, so I see no reason for why you should put kids in an abnormal family situation like that. Anyways, I mean, that's
it's a shortage in people who will adopt. We got a lot of orphans.
Yeah, for babies. Because I mean, for like grown kids, yeah, like hardly anybody wants to adopt grown kids. That's why the whole foster care like system is awful. Anyways, I mean that's a whole tangent in which you can easily attack it. You can attack my positions easily as well. So have at it.
As an institution of self-government, Hegel made the head of a state a hereditary monarch and turned the legislature into an estate assembly, retaining feudal privilege and subverting the demarcation between civil society and state. Here we go. Now we get into Marx. Marx, by contrast, attempted to conceive the economy as the basis of civil society by focusing upon the dynamic of capital accumulation and the capital-labor relation, excluding all remnants of feudal pre-modern formations. In so doing, Marx aimed to carry through a critique of political economy that would eliminate the imposition of natural relations upon market activity, such as Smith and Ricardo committed. Instead, Marx aimed to determine economic relations in strictly social terms. Wait. Instead, Marx aimed to determine economic relations in strictly social... No, he determined social relations in strictly economic terms.
No, you fucking moron. So let's go through that. So in so doing, Marx aimed to carry through a critique of political economy that would eliminate the imposition of natural relations upon market activity, such as Smith and Ricardo committed. What he's talking about? The labor theory of value. The labor theory of value is what led them to think that the division of labor and the structure of the economy on top of that was actually a natural outgrowth of humans, like that would appear in any human society because of that specific relationship. What is value determined by? The natural factor called time in labor. When Marx comes about and Marx corrects, quote unquote, the labor theory of value, how does he correct it? He says it is not actually due to the natural determination of time. It is the socially necessary abstract labor time, which is not the natural one. What dictates the entire economy is, first and foremost, there are the relations of production, the class relationships in which, because I am the capitalist and I own the means of production, you must be the laborer who works my capital, produces commodities, which I then sell in the market, which then you also buy in this whole circuit of consumption and exchange. That is indeed Marx's position. So society comes first. It's not economy comes first, you moron. Society comes first. The economy does not magically precede. The economy doesn't magically exist. That's why class relationship, which is political, it's political first, is what leads to the structure of the economy. And it also happens to be that the class relation also requires a certain development of the means of production, the scientific, instruments and implements, which then allow certain other material capacities, which either go far in letting people do things that get out of the control of the dominant class, which then allows a new class structure to take effect. What's so hard about that? I don't know. It's basic Marxism.
Not to mention commodity fetishism too.
Yeah, like the whole labor theory of value has that aspect of commodity fetishism. Like, because there's so much labor, this thing, its objective value is this, and somehow that ought to command me to pay something for it. Marx's whole thing is like, no, if it's not socially necessary, who cares how much labor you spent on it? The labor time has nothing to do with anything. And what is socially necessary? Well, it's that somebody wants it. It's a social desire.
That's completely backwards. Although Marx sought to free his economic conception of Smith's appeals to natural proclivities to truck and barter and Ricardo's appeal to the natural fertility of the soil as basis of wealth accumulation, Marx's conception of capital remained hobbled by three abiding confusions. All right, here we go. Marx's three abiding confusions. First, Marx's critique of political economy remained incomplete, owing above all to his retention of a labor theory of value. Oh my god. Oh my god.
How dare you?
Is he not aware? Does he not know? Did he not read Capital Volume 1, Chapter 1? Is he not aware of the transformation problem?
Wow. Okay. Listen. Something you need to understand about Marx, okay? Marx does not think that the value of a thing is identical in some metaphysical sense with the labor contained in it.
And did anybody say that? No. Did the book say that? No. If it refers to the labor theory of value as regarding Marx, guess what he's talking about? So see necessary abstract labor time.
Labor has to be an exchangeable commodity on the market. Once you have labor as an exchangeable commodity on the market, once you have labor doubled as something that can be exchanged, made equivalent with other commodities, then you can engage in a labor theory of value.
The fuck is he talking about? That has nothing to do with this. The exchange of things is what posits the labor theory of value. Read Capital, Volume 1, Chapter 1. It's not until what? The end of Chapter 3, I think, that the exchange of labor as an object, a commodity in the market comes up, and therefore the capital relationship comes up. And I think that's after the deduction of finance capital, which is the purely finance and, what's it called? Mercantile capital. So finance capital is pretty easy. I own money. I give it to you on contract that you're going to pay me back more than I gave you. Easy. And how does that work? Well, it's my money. I can make whatever rules I want, and that's the rule that I can get away with. Merchant capital is you move things around. You play arbitrage in the market. And then Marx also then gets the deduction of industrial capital, which is there's a particular commodity which allows for you can buy it, and of its own, in its nature, it is the kind of thing which expands capital, and that's what like labor power is. Labor power allows you to consume it, you pay for it, and in paying for it, it produces surplus value. That has nothing to do yet with this. The labor theory of value does not rely as a deduction first upon labor and capital being sold. As a matter of fact, it just doesn't rely on them, period. The system of commodity exchange as a purely market mechanism is separate from the capital circuit of the market. They're not identical. You can have markets without capitalism, industrial capital, merchant capital, and finance capital. It's just called basic barter and exchange.
Which he does. Because remember, it is a critique of political economy. Das Kapital is a...
why do people do this? I fucking hate it. It's got an English title. You've been using the English title this whole time. Why? Like, what do they think? Like, it makes them sound smarter or something? Oh, Das Kapital. Yeah, you don't hear this from Hegelians. They don't just like, they're not calling the science of logic, they're like, the Wissenschaft der Logik. I don't know. It's pseud tactics. But yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Critique of political economy.
He doesn't know what the critique is, by the way. The critique is a critique of the categories. This is actually what Marxist humanists, what's his name? Cyril Smith, I think. Cyril Smith is one of the few people who I think are ultimately consistent about this. Marxist humanists are really big on this, the critique of political economy, in which their position is that the meaning of this is that Marx is performing an imminent critique which ends in a total disillusion of the system by showing that it's utterly nonsense in the end, and therefore that capitalism is in essence not real. It is a parasitic illusion upon the reality of production, that you don't need this thing, and therefore Marx is not offering a theory trying to say correct the political economists. He was trying to critique the entirety of the essence of political economy itself as an idea, and therefore they deny that Marx is offering any functional theory about the operations of a real economy. So they don't think that, they're not like people like, what's his name, Paul Cockshott, or what's the other Marxist humanist theoretician? Well, Cockshott isn't a humanist, he's a cybernetics Leninist moron. Who am I thinking of?
Lukács?
No, not Lukács. It's he's a living economist right now. He's the single system interpretation guy. Like, he's the guy that Paul Kuhn, Cooney from like Capitalism 101 follows. Anyways, those guys posit like Marx actually has, and he's setting forth a scientific theory that is supposed to describe the real economy we live in. The people who focus on the critique of political economy interpretation are saying, no, he's not offering any functional theory. He's just critiquing the categories of political economy itself to show that political economy has a fictitious object, that the reason why we have all these problems is precisely because people are trying to make real a thing that is not real, that the economy itself is not real. It's not a real object of cognition. It's not a real object ontologically. And therefore, that's why we need to get rid of markets and the whole idea of economics in general. We just need to have a planned productive system. So, and indeed, the critique aspect of political economy is the Hegelian critique of like, well, we're taking the categories as they are, seeing what is consequent to them. And Marx indeed does think that this leads to a total negation of the system eventually. But he's wrong. At least he's wrong in the way that he thinks that it leads to the negation of the system. I will give him one thing. I think that he's right on the technological thesis that there is a certain point at which the means of production will be such that the relationships of markets and capital accumulation, all that stuff, will just be utterly meaningless. Like, there will just be no sense to it. But that is still a long way off for us. It will definitely not come to an end in our lifetime.
What Smith and Ricardo were doing. Political economy. Oh my God. All right. First, I'm going to just massage the aneurysm out for a second, and we're going to continue.
This guy literally has a fucking monkey brain.
What's with this performative outrage?
Because it gets views, man.
Oh my God.
Like, oh my God. It'd probably be more entertaining if he had a Valley Girl accent. But yeah, I don't know. Like, all these fucking stupid faces that he's making. Like, he wasn't this way before. I know that. So he's being shaped. He's being reshaped by the algorithm, man. Sad.
First, Marx's critique of political economy.
Oh, somebody want to say something?
Well, okay, I might have misunderstood him, but did he actually contradict Winfield at all? Like, it sounds like he's still ultimately conceding that Marx retains a labor theory of value. Like, he just had an aneurysm about that statement, but it doesn't sound like he actually disagrees with it. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know.
No, he misunderstood it. So he thinks that Winfield is saying that Marx is positing a labor theory of value. His response is the Marxist humanist response of, no, Marx is not positing a labor theory of value. He's making a critique of political economy. So he's critiquing what, Smith and Ricardo were doing. The problem with that is that that's clearly wrong. Because right. Marx does offer his theory of value, not Smith's and not Ricardo's. And he specifically says, I, Marx, am correcting their mistake. There is a labor theory of value. I have corrected it to what it should be. They were wrong. The correction is socially abstract necessary labor time. And the only reason anybody thinks, no, he's not offering his own theory of economics, he's just critiquing their theory. They were doing political economy. Then why did he offer his own redefinition? How does that make any sense?
Right. Yeah, I see, yeah.
So Winfield is right. Sunday just doesn't understand basic Marxist economics because he doesn't read primary shit. I'm sure of it. The only people who say this shit are the ones who read the Marxist humanists. And I know that his friends are a bunch of Marxist humanist morons. I respect Marxist humanists in that philosophically they are the only consistent ones with taking the majority of Marxist worldview and making it a coherent system. But that then throws away most of Marx's life work, which was really an attempt at a scientific empirical theory of an actual existing system of economics.
Remained incomplete, owing above all to his retention of the labor theory.
Can you put yourself on push to talk, Ethan? Thank you.
Critique is too strong a word. No, it's literally that's not too strong a word. It's critique, as in critique of pure reason. He's a philosopher. He's a freaking philosopher. Hang on one sec. I'm going to show you. I will show you. You will see.
I bet he doesn't know what the critique of pure reason is actually about. The critique of pure reason also happens to put forth a positive theory of reason. Does this guy think Kant was some kind of skeptic, that he was critiquing pure reason? He wasn't putting a theory of actual reason. That's why there's a big section on the critique of pure reason on the ideas, the transcendental ideas, which are the ideas of reason, to explain why we have the dialectical illusions. It's totally no positive theory of reason there. It's not like he was, trying to set up a system by which we could follow these ideas of reason and still say something, of worth about metaphysics, which is exactly what Kant says he's trying to do, set up the capacity for the possibility of metaphysics.
Do you see? By the way, not the preferred edition. I just wanted to pull this one out because this is what people recognize. Look. Capital. It says capital there, right? But what's that smaller text? That's kind of blurry. What does that say? What does that say right there? What's that say right there? Do you see? Do you see? Those are not boxers, those are gym shorts. What's wrong with you? Pervert. The boxes are for the OnlyFans. But if you take his argument...
Well, he's doing the equivalent of OnlyFans.
It's 100% critique. Critique does not mean to criticize. It also means that you can use them a little bit synonymously, but critique is different from a criticism, okay? It's not a roasting of political economy. Here's an example, okay? Look. Nietzsche, Genealogy of Morality. Is that a roasting of slave morality? Yeah, it is kind of a little bit. But he's not trying to do away with it. He actually thinks it has an important positive constituting value in making human beings significantly more interesting and capable of things.
Yes, he's trying to do away with it, you fucking moron. His whole, point is, yes, it made people more interesting. Stop sticking to it. Stop being a Christian. Like slave morality was interesting 2,000 years ago. Jesus is dead. Move on.
He doesn't spare himself from, sometimes the stuff that he likes isn't necessarily the stuff that's actually good for the species. And what I'm doing, a critique or a roast? Ideally a little bit of the latter, but if I'm being honest, so far it's mostly the former. Although Marx seeks to...
Mostly the former. Let's see. All that he has said is, this is bad. And then made entirely factually incorrect statements. Correcting things that he doesn't understand. I mean, it's not even a roast either. So it's neither. It's neither a critique nor a roast. It's just kind of slop. It's a whole different category.
Economic relations are determined by the interactions of commodity owners, and more specifically, economic relations aren't determined by the interactions of commodity owners. The interactions of commodity owners are determined by economic relations, and more specifically how individual capitals with one another and their other consumers and employees. His labor theory of value orders the market according to the technical relations that operate within the immediate labor process, irrespective of the realization of profit, the sale of what is produced, and the dynamics of competition. This reduction of social to technical determination... This reduction of social to technical determination extends to Marx's treatment of the circulation process of capital, where he privileges the stage of production capital over the stages of money... the stage of production capital over the stages of money and commodity capital. It finally undermines Marx's conception of the system of individual capitals. Marx's so-called price-value transformation and appeal to an average rate of profit end up rendering the determination of price and profit through competition an epiphenomenon, adding nothing essential to the underlying sway of the labor theory. Oh my god, man. I'm actually gonna have a stroke from this. This is awful. This is awful.
Such a deep critique.
Second, Marx fails to conceive capital.
Nothing Winfield said in that paragraph was wrong, by the way. That is the problem. Marx does have two contradictory views of capitalism. One of them is, straight up, he says, capital is fundamentally a social relationship. Period. No qualifications. The ultimate reality of capital is a social relationship. What is the section on chapter 1, volume 1 at the end about the fetishism of commodities? That people mistake market exchange as being between things instead of between people. But what is the ultimate reality? The exchange between people. Are people driven magically by some kind of force of capitalism to go and exchange? No. People have social institutions and modes of recognition in which they have set up this thing called exchange, these things called commodities, market relationships, all these things. And they submit themselves to it. It's like a system of mathematics. Once you have set up the rules of your arithmetic and your algebras, and what entities are there and what signs and whatnot, then you're subject to those rules. And those rules do have an objective operation, despite the fact that they are completely subjective fictions and creations. So Marx's position is that this is the nature of capitalism. The rules are fictitious, but the objective operations are consequent to accepting these fictions. But ultimately they are fictitious. They are an epiphenomenon. The real reality, the real thing of the economy is production. It's what there is, how much there is, who needs it, how much they need, when they need it, and who's going to make it. The second contradictory thing, though, is then that within a theory in which this is supposedly entirely social, Marx then goes ahead and posits that actually there is something objectively natural about it, in which the labor theory of value, social necessary abstract labor time, is what is determining this entire process through the process of capital accumulation. Systematically, this makes no sense, because there's nothing, just as like there's nothing that makes people have to pay for mud pies, there's nothing that makes people have to pay just because you're working at a fucking factory. There's nothing about that that calls up a desire within people to pay you anything. So social necessary abstract labor time does not end up explaining the reasons for exchange and how exchange actually works. The only reason it ends up explaining anything at all on the level of exchange and how prices come down through competition is that through competition, everybody's driven down through the market mechanism to the lowest time of production. But even that does not dictate that anybody will want or have to pay any certain amount. All that it dictates is that for you to stay in business, to reproduce your capacity to keep on creating this commodity and putting it to market, there has to be a minimum value that you must get through exchange. One, it must be pay for your capacity to reproduce the process of production again, and two, you're doing it because you want to get some profit. That's it. That's all that theory can actually like set out. That these are the necessary prices of production. But even then, once different circuits of capital are set up, this doesn't work out according to Marx's own theory, because then it's not a generalization of the rate of profit. It's not a generalization of the lowest socially necessary labor time across the market. It then becomes a generalization of the socially necessary rate of profit across industries, across capitals. And therefore, what actually dictates the flow of commodities and their production is these circuits of capital and their rates of profit, so that you can have industries in which the rate of profit is within the serviceable bounds, and yet the labor time is like actually way above the socially necessary, mainly because the capitals shift investment and money around to equalize rates. So the whole theory of socially necessary labor time doesn't even end up accounting for why market prices are the way they are. It's really interesting. And like Winfields account of that is just to say, well, actually, the whole labor time thing is not really an abstract labor time thing at all. Ultimately, it's all a social relationship. Labor does not refer to physical human labor. Labor just refers to the expansive process of capital in the industrial process, employing labor power. So anything that does not do that by the standard of capital is de facto not labor, because the category of labor is no longer tied to biological labor.
Universality. What? Due in no small part to his retention of the labor theory of value, Marx tends to identify capital with private enterprise employing wage laborers. No, he doesn't. Ignoring the other forms that capital can take. This limits Marx's ability to address the full challenge to economic justice that capital presents, but he doesn't do that, though. He doesn't.
He does. It's people after Marx that correct that. That's why you have people like Lenin and these... What's the other guy who has a theory of imperialism?
The British guy?
He might be British.
the guy that Lenin got his theory of imperialism from, right? It's
Well, yeah,
British.
Lenin expands it into the theory of imperialism, in which you can have state capital, like the state itself as a capitalist, which Marx doesn't talk about. And then this is furthered by the guy who has the theory of monopoly capital. I think that's just the title of his book, the theory of monopoly capital, which the state itself now is the capitalist. Capitalism is no longer a private enterprise. Let me look it up. Paul Sweezy and Paul Aberon. Those are the guys. So yes, because in Capital, volumes 1 through 3, Marx is treating only with private enterprises, like below the state level, whereas Capital can actually operate at the state level itself. You can have also, like, Marx doesn't really talk about worker co-ops and all these things. You don't just have individual tyrannies of capital. Like, you can have capital is actually very modular. But you didn't have to read Winfield or Hegel to understand this. I knew this way back when.
Do that though. He doesn't do that though. It's not what he does.
It is what he does.
It's not about private enterprise employing wage laborers. States can engage in capitalism. That's no. Richard D. and Winfield is where Antonio Wolff gets his interpretation of Hegel and Marx, is it?
No, it isn't. Just in case you're wondering, I only have like one article where I specifically cited Winfield because I hadn't thought about that on my own yet. So I just looked at what he had explained about the concept. And once I thought about the concept on my own, I disagreed with his way of interpreting it.
I thought he just read Hegel.
That's right. I do read Hegel. Get it straight from the source, straight from the cow.
Unfortunate. Third.
It would not be unfortunate if somebody got their reading of Hegel from Winfield, though. You can do infinitely worse. I mean, if you got your interpretation from Pinkard or Pippin or whatever, yeah, you'd be in pretty bad straits. Winfield, Holgate, White. Those are the three main people that I suggest to people, because those are the only three people I've ever read about Hegel. I don't read secondary literature in general. And I read those... I read like Winfield's take on Hegel like after I'd figured out how the method works, and I was like, okay, like, when I read the first chapter, like, he gets it, he knows what he's talking about. So I read like the rest of it. Hegel and the Future Metaphysics, or Future Systematic Metaphysics, which is a very good introduction if you're quick to catch up in analytic form. Who else did I mention? Holgate. Holgate's a staple name. Everybody knows about Holgate. I don't need to say anything about him. I think Alan White is the other one. The only reason I read Alan White is because Alan White had a book on Schelling, which is very good, by the way. Made me feel a lot of respect and sympathy for Schelling. And then he had a second book going over Schelling's critique of Hegel in detail, where he has half of the book is Schelling's critique, half of the book is the Hegelian response to that critique. And I don't 100% agree with what he says in the Hegelian response as to what Hegel's system is, but it is still infinitely better than Pickard and Pippin. And Alan White basically did what I think anybody who's rational should do, which is he's like, well, this Hegelian stuff is pretty good, but it needs a bit of an update. So he just kind of decided to throw Hegel in the fucking trash can and just come up with his own new system. Kind of following in, trying to answer in the same way that Hegel does, but in a completely new way. And I've never looked into his actual original philosophy.
Never coherently tackles the universality of the economic relations he conceives. Because they aren't universal. They're not universal.
When a philosopher mentions the universality of something, he's talking about its concept, its essence, the category itself.
Yo, did something actually happen between you and President Sunday? Like, why did he just join the Discord all of a sudden?
Did you not see that he threw a shit fit in the void?
Yeah, no, I did see. Did he just like randomly decide to join and then like start
No,
shitting all over the floor and pissing
he's
himself?
been on he's been on this server for 4 years or something. He just never took part in anything.
Oh, okay. Well, why did he suddenly decided to fucking schizo out? Like, did he just have nothing better to do?
He's a drama whore. That's literally his job.
Yeah.
He's desperate for drama anywhere in any way that he can get it.
You think he's actually gonna do like a expose on why you're a fraud or some shit?
He can go ahead. I mean, he'll find nothing. I mean, if he operates at that level that he's operating here, where he's like, no, that's wrong, just bad, doesn't make sense. If people believe him, I mean, those people were not people I was ever going to reach anyways. I mean, if that's all it takes for you to go and believe something, no details given, no substance, no knowledge portrayed or manifested. I'm not too worried about that.
I don't know what else to say about this dude if he's reading about the universality of economic relations and thinking that Winfield means, capitalist relations exist everywhere and have since the beginning of time. And he obviously doesn't mean that.
Yeah, obvious to us because we've studied things as opposed to him.
No, obvious because nobody would ever say that.
Josh, that's because you don't hang out with retards. He does. His whole channel is shit talking retards and hanging out with retards and being worshipped by retards. So his assumption is that everybody must be equally retarded to him.
What is the category of philosophy people call it that have literally no coherent critique of the world, but they talk as if they know anything? Because I swear it's there's a huge breed of these people, and I swear that they're everywhere, right? But they don't subscribe to any kind of coherent doctrine.
Sophism. Except the sophists in Greece actually had skill. The funny thing about the sophists is the funny thing about the sophists, which they were giving a bad rap by Plato. The sophists were actually capable of genuine philosophy. They just didn't care. So they sold themselves as teachers who would teach anybody to use rhetoric so that they could appear to win any argument, even when they were talking bullshit. But they knew exactly how to make arguments that weren't bullshit. Problem is, people like Sunday, they can't tell a good argument from a bad argument. They just talk bullshit.
On the one hand, he recognizes that the disengaged economy in which capital pursues its accumulation has a universality
What
that
do you
is
even
susceptible
like
to conceptualization.
do about these kinds of people? Well, like because like interacting with them, especially on like a public stage, I don't think is like the correct option at all. Like, what do you do? Well, like, you just ignore him?
Oh, if he makes a video about me, yeah, I'll just ignore it. I mean, he has nothing. Nothing he could possibly say about me that's true, and anybody with half a fucking brain cell can tell. Anybody with half a fucking brain can watch this video and know that he has said nothing of value actually critiquing anything in the text. And if you even half know your Marx or whatever, you know that what Winfield has said about Marx is actually true. Like it's only a problem for ignorant people and like stupid people, and the ignorant and the stupid are a pile that you don't get anywhere. He wanted me to come on his fucking stream to debate him. For what? So he can just do this and go, no, like, you don't know what you're talking about. What would his response be to anything that I've said? Nothing. He'd just say, well, you're just talking a bunch of nonsense. It's just a bunch of words. You people and your philosophies, you just make up a bunch of jargon. That's all he'd say. Like, what would be the point of talking to this guy? None.
It's like running out of content.
You've explained all your jargon.
I'd do it if what Josh said happened. If he offered me $100 and I could go on and I could just ignore him. First, he'd have to pay me. And then I would go on the entire time for however much he needed me, like an hour or two. He could yap all he wants. I would just mute him and like watch something or write something on the side. And
Well,
you know,
that you're actually going to go on if he pays you first. Goes all the way back to our discussion on bribery.
Exactly. Oh, Rain, you weren't here, but I did make a comment on the invalidity of the homosexual parents in a family. Josh does not quite agree with me on that. You have a lot more to say on that, Rain. If you want to give your thoughts on that, let me know. It's a hot topic.
I was just making tea. What was the topic?
Well, right now we're just critiquing his critique. It's not a critique. It's not even. What would you call this? Again, just slop. Slop is what I would call it. He's literally not even responding to the text. Like, his monkey brain sees a word he thinks he knows, and he just like projects all kinds of nonsense onto it, which has nothing to do with what he's reading. But earlier there was
reason to continue. Because, I think we've gotten to the point. Like, he just doesn't understand.
Let's finish the third Marx point, and then we'll wrap it up.
Further, his argument unfolds largely as an imminent conceptual development, first addressing what is universal at capital, then considering the particular phases of capital in its life cycle.
Wait, are you streaming something or?
Yes, it's linked on the VC channel.
Oh, damn. I'm so sorry. I just came in and started talking. Like, my bad. I didn't see it at all.
You'd have to scroll up to... it's the Let's Watch Together link.
No, thank you, Josh.
So anyways, there you go. Just what I said. Marx never coherently tackles the universality of economic relations he conceives, and he was like, they're not universal. And then what does he do? He explains it. On the one hand, he recognizes the disengaged economy in which capital pursues its accumulation has a universality that makes it susceptible to conceptualization. So what is the universality here? The concept itself, its essence.
Finally, addressing the individuality of capital in the process of competition.
Oh, he didn't comment on the developmental stuff, the imminent conceptualization. Probably because he didn't understand it.
Instead of modeling empirical observations, Marx follows out how the determinations of economic interaction develop themselves in constituting the system of capitals starting from the most elementary minimal interaction that all subsequent relations presuppose and incorporate. On the other hand, Marx regards capital as a particular historical economic formation, at times suggesting that his development of the concept of capital is an empirical descriptive investigation of a purely contingent social reality. No, that's absolutely what it is. That is absolutely what it is.
It is not absolutely what it is, you fucking moron. Capital Volume 1, Chapter 1. Easy peasy. It's like, nobody could read that and think that's an empirical investigation into the nature of commodities. Marx himself comments that he was coquetting with Hegel in Chapter 1, that he used his peculiar form of exposition. And it is Hegel's form of exposition. Like, it legit is. It's what shows that Marx was truly, like, one of the very few people who, like, understood how to think like Hegel, but was too fucking lazy to fucking finish it out. Well, I wouldn't call him lazy. Marx, you can call Marx many things, but lazy is not one of them. He just wasn't interested.
This historical particularization of the capital economy is connected to Marx's equivocal evaluation of its normativity. Equivocal evaluation of its normativity, what? Although he acknowledged, sorry, I'm saying what a lot, I'm legitimately baffled. Although he acknowledges that commodity relations operate in accord with juridical right, I don't even know how to start unpacking that. He suggests that the workings of capital impose an unequal domination, subverting economic freedom.
See, Marx also comments on this in Capital. It's in the same transition to industrial capital where wage labor comes about, labor power comes about as a category, in which Marx talks about, well, this exploitation thing happens, and he's like, but it's not unjust, it's not immoral, it's not unethical. So what's the normativity here? That according to the rules of exchange, this is entirely legit above water. There's nothing nefarious about it. There's nothing like where somebody's being forced into it, but what he's talking about in there is the purely conceptual relationships. Yes, later on at the end of the book, he starts talking about, what is it called? The historical, the specific terms he uses for it, accumulation by dispossession, I think. Where, the landed peasantry was kicked out from the land, they had no property, so therefore they were forced to go work in the factories in England. But on the purely market relational side, everything is consensual. You're not a slave. You're a wage worker, but you're not a slave. You can leave whenever you want. Whether it's actually feasible for you is a different thing. Whether you can survive outside that system is a different thing. But on the purely surface level of the norms of society, which everybody accepts, like the existence of property, the enforcement of contracts, all these other things which are also juridical, it is entirely within the norm. There's nothing that anybody is being imposed to do that they will not, assent to.
I mean, he shows that nakedly. Like that's the basis of class distinction. Is one owns the means of production, one only has their labor to sell, one of them can sell to anybody else, the other one needs the other one to live. What Marx never fully considers is whether this impairment of economic right is an irremediable failing that deprives capital of
Okay, just to explain. So Marx's equivocal evaluation of its normativity. So Marx says, look, by the standards of society, this is right. It's okay. It's good. And then Marx makes an underhanded criticism without any explicit basis that during Marx's lifetime and when Capital was first published, no basis anywhere could be spied. Because he didn't put the basis on it is actually in his unwritten, well, not his unwritten, his unpublished work in the 1844 manuscripts, which has his metaphysical account of what humanity is, what a human being is, and the human ontology, which leads to why this class distinction and inequalities are not okay. So Marx says it's okay. He also, in his explicit works, he also says morality is a construction of class society. And then he goes and says, but it's wrong, implicitly. That's the equivocation. He both admits that, given his own standards, that morality is just based on the class that dominates, then everything here in capitalism is okay. It's fine, it's good, it's under the norm. But then he goes and imposes a counter critique of, but it's not okay actually. But based on what? Based on the interests of the working class. But what should that matter? So, if you're a part of the capitalist class, it's okay and it's good. If you're part of the working class, it's not okay and it's bad, just merely because of your respectable position. Yet supposedly there's, in the society, an agreement that these rules by which we operate, everybody agrees to, and they're good. Nobody says they're bad. Nobody says property itself is bad. Well, except some anarchists and communists. Nobody's going around saying juridical law is bad and contracts are bad, that we shouldn't have them, that they're evil. No, everybody accepts it, but there's this weird assumption that no, there's somehow something wrong. But the reason for why it's wrong is just never really brought up.
Normative. What Marx never fully considers is whether this impairment of economic right is an irremediable failing that deprives capital of normative validity, or whether it represents market dynamics that can be remedied by the interventions of social interest groups, such as trade unions and consumer organizations, and by public... What is he referring to here? Like, where would he do this? This isn't A, not appropriate subject matter for Das Kapital, but B, like...
He had to correct himself. He's going to be a normie and say capital. But then he's like, no, I'm an educated intellectual. I have to say Das Kapital. What is Winfield getting at? It's not hard. Like, I don't know why he's confused. Look, maybe I'm shitting on him too hard because, as far as I'm aware, he is, perpetually sleep deprived. I don't know why. Maybe he has sleeping problems, or it's he streams too much or whatever. But I know from experience, fatigue does get to you and you don't think quite straight. So a lot of things that are obvious, like when you're wide and awake, aren't obvious. But Winfield is saying, look, Marx is saying there's these problems with capitalism. And he's like, well, these are bad. But now, is the problem an irremediable problem? Is the problem that, this in itself... is it like an engine which has a bad cylinder that we can just do some modifications here and there to the engine so that the cylinder now fits or whatever? Or is it that the design of the engine is itself just completely wrong and it's by design dysfunctional? Marx's position is the engine, capitalism, is by design dysfunctional. There is no remedying it. There's no modifications you can make to the engine because the entire design philosophy is wrong. It doesn't work. It's going to explode every single time. Winfield's position is no, the engine is just incomplete. Or rather, the engine is not some kind of independent entity. It actually functions within, a whole system of a car or whatever it is that you're powering. And those things can modulate how much fuel is going to the engine, how heavy the pushback on the explosion is to push it back and generate energy, all these stuff. So trade unions, state interventions, institutions that don't submit to market dynamics can modify and impinge upon what the market is doing. So the market is it's its own thing. The analogy is better put like an organ in your body, where your heart, your lungs, each one they have their own independent little function. They don't need you micromanaging them. They do their thing on their own. But whenever if you're running, right, you start breathing harder, faster. You need to get more oxygen. Your lungs are being modified as they're working the exact same way, but at the pace that they're working is being modified to the extent that there's a certain richness of oxygen in the air. They're being modified, and they will work and they respond in a certain way. Likewise, the economy naturally works a certain way, but you always have to consider it in context. If you let the lungs try to become the entire body, cancer, you die. The lungs die. Okay, if you let the market economy take over everything in your society, yeah, it's going to destroy your society and then destroy itself. That's pretty obvious. Winfield's position is, well, we have other organs in this society. It's not all lungs, it's not all stomach, it's not all heart. These relate to each other. These other ones modify the way in which the other ones work. They don't change the essential function, but they modify how much they're working, at what pace, and all these other things. So, can they be modified? Yeah, to a certain extent.
You just need to put a chip into the brain of capitalism.
Yep.
It's not a matter of normative validity.
He doesn't know what normative validity is. What he means there by normative validity is capital an actual, real, objective process? If it is, there's a reason it exists, and there's a reason we have to deal with it. If it isn't, then of course there's a reason it shouldn't exist, and we shouldn't deal with it. Winfield's on the position that it exists. It actually serves an objective purpose for the realization of human freedom. Therefore, it is normative valid. Not only is it the case that capitalism happens to exist now, Winfield's position is it should exist now. Maybe in the future it shouldn't exist, but it should exist now.
This is one thing that's actually tricky for people who don't read Hegel to grasp, is that things can there can be spiritual phenomena in the sense of like things that human beings do that don't exist without them, that are not just social constructs, they're not just stipulations, they're not just arbitrary. Like, it can be in virtue of what a thinking human being is, that there are conceptually necessary relationships of property ownership, exchange, things like that, that can develop and unfold from that are not just constructs, they're not just stipulations, they are necessary. They're as logically necessary as gravity and things like that. But that's something that's hard for people to grasp if they don't have Hegel or something like that.
Let me tell you, if we lived in a socialist utopia, President Sunday would not have a computer and would not have a job producing slop for idiots.
He probably would have got put against the wall already.
He'd probably be doing a nice lumbering job, being an actual useful, productive member of society.
Gulag. Wait, no, if he's a liberal or like a pseudo-anarchist, he would have got probably gulagged or purged.
He would have gotten gulagged. Well, that is a gulag. Siberia was a gulag, but he would have gotten gulag. He wouldn't be purged. This he's no Trotsky. He doesn't have the guts to actually go and try to
I wouldn't assume he'd
do
lead
people.
He would be one of the guys who would support it and help usher it in his own little way, and then get gulagged.
Well, I don't think so. I think he's pretty cowardly. He's only brave on screen, when all he does is shit talk.
I see what you're saying. You have to be a threat in the first place in order for them to gulag you.
Marx's argument isn't that capitalism is bad. Marx is arguing that capitalism operates according to the principles that he lays out. He's critiquing capitalism.
His argument is that it's bad, moron. Why do you think that he offers like the whole communist thing and he exhorts people towards, you know, a workers' revolution? Like this is the whole fallacy. Well, look, you know, Marx doesn't believe in morality. Morality is a fiction. Okay, so then why should we get rid of capitalism? Well, it doesn't work. And it works for the billionaires. Yeah, but that's bad. Yeah, bad for who? Well, it's bad for the rest of us. And why should we care about the rest of you? Well, you should. Well, apparently not. There you go. There's your normativity. Where's the normativity? You just gave it. The moment you say, well, this is bad and we ought to change it, and you exhort people to change it, then you're clearly making a moralistic claim. You don't have to say, oh, I, President Sunday, or I, Marx, am declaring this to be moral or immoral. There's this thing called, practical implication that in what you're doing is already implied the thing that you're denying. It doesn't matter if you verbally deny it. It doesn't matter. If you're punching somebody, you're like, I'm not punching you. I'm not punching you, but you're actually physically punching them. Like, your words don't matter. It doesn't matter what you say. It's what you do.
He's showing how it generates concepts that then fall back on capitalism and serve as an explanation for itself that actually obscures its real workings. Should I read Capital? 100%. It's fucking brilliant. Get the new Princeton edition. I think it's still on sale on Amazon. It's gorgeously put together, but it's also a really clear, a really good clear translation. It's got some really good supplementary material. But absolutely,
apparently not clear enough.
Sunday, see this like a state, please. The absolute state I am in right now is what I'm seeing this as. I'm just like...
Scratch your head more, monkey.
Like, here's the thing. You don't want these dynamics to be remedied. If you want the revolutionary progression to a new economic form beyond...
Guys, he's not being normative. But there's this thing called progress, and we measure by it. It's totally not a rule.
On capitalism, you don't want remedies. The entire function of these remedial dynamics is to maintain a moribund system. A moribund system that finds itself suddenly at odds in terms of its self-interest and longevity with capital.
And that's why he lives in Cuba.
Is he making like an accelerationist argument here? Like, why would you not want unions?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, this is where these people, like, don't realize how stupid they are. I will admit that I once had these positions. I am ashamed. But in my defense, I was a stupid, young, 22-year-old, all right? I stuck with them only around, like, I was, 26. So I grew out of it.
That's how you become a useful idiot for capital.
Oh, no, I'm still for putting people like Donald Trump against the wall, Bill Gates, put him against the wall, don't care. Charge them with crimes against humanity, which, they've committed plenty. But at the same time, I like what we've gotten out of the markets. I'm not going to deny. And would they have been produced in the Soviet Union? No. Would they have been produced in Mao's China? No. Are they being produced in Cuba? No. Everything this guy lives on. Forget about, this is not an argument like, oh, you hate capitalism and you're on a cell phone. No. His lifestyle is literally the worst degradations of capitalism. He's a spiritual whore. He sells himself out on stream, knowingly responding. He initially hated it. He didn't want to do it. He used to like mainly do these streams where he tried to teach people, just like Has began his streams like trying to teach people, and he realized that gets you nowhere. You don't get famous and you don't make money, and you got to make money. And he decided that the way for him to make money was not to have an actual job. Now I don't know if he has problems that he can't work something else, and he couldn't qualify for neat bucks, but decided this was his way to make money, and now he's stuck doing this. And it's kind of melted his brain a little bit, or a lot, I'm not sure. And he can't understand basic things. Because he doesn't have an alternative. He just just like most anarchists, it's like, well, these things are bad. Okay, what's the replacement? Well, we just get rid of them. And what's the world going to be like? Well, it's going to be a workers' utopia. We're all going to come together, just like work it out. Okay, great. That's not happened before, right? Nobody's ever torn down a state, not had a clue what to do, and come together and just worked it out. And how did that end up? They complain about idealism, and yet like they're the fucking biggest idealists ever. It's stupid.
Is it all 3 volumes? No, they've only translated volume 1. But they are working on volume 2 apparently.
Yeah. In case you don't know, volume 2 and volume 3 are legitimate. They weren't finished. They were just cobbled together by Engels, whatever he thought important in the order that he thought it were important. So they don't constitute a full theory at all. They are incomplete. The only complete one is volume 1.
Is it a bit blah blah blah? Which one? Capital?
Okay, actually, yeah, we'll just leave it there. All right, for anybody watching, there you go. President Sunday's stupid. He's a moron. Talks a lot of shit. Hypocrite. Just saying, hey, President Sunday, you're a hypocrite. You talk about like no substance. You talk about no substance, and literally all the substance that he had was like, that's just wrong. It's unintelligible.
That's
No.
I don't understand.
No actual criticism of any of the concepts. And he's like, well, I don't know what he means by this. I can't look things up. I don't know how to Google. I can't even ask ChatGPT. I'm too lazy. He said he was going to make a video about me before I make a video about him, where he was going to show that I'm a fraud. And he's like, can you leave me that video of you like critiquing, perspective philosophy? And I'm like, well, am I supposed to do your opposition research for you? Like, are you that fucking lazy? Then I blocked him. Yeah. Anyways, if you watch through all of this, you must enjoy slop. You should feel guilty about that. You should probably go cleanse your mind and listen to. There's that one stream we did. Well, it's not a stream. There's a recorded reading of Capital Chapter 1 where I went into the quote-unquote Hegelian critique of it. That didn't get a lot of views. Share that around. Hey, Sunday, if you want to make a criticism, critique that video. I dare you. You can find it. It's not hard to find on my channel. But all right, that'll be it. See you around.